believe we're 28, approximately. Yeah, 28. Well, again, when you have difficult situations like working on Detroit, we work on a lot of tough issues, but I think we've worked very hard to be a good partner, and I appreciate the mayor and his hard work and diligence in trying to make Detroit a better place. And he's done a lot of things to make Detroit a better place. We just need to redouble that effort and do even more in a faster period of time. Well, that's a tough question, Kyle. When you look at the report that just came out from Kevin Orr, literally you're talking about theoretically billions of dollars if you look at the balance sheet. So I don't view that as a viable solution. Well, again, yeah, you said $300 million pretty easily. That's a big number. And that's a big part of the question that I don't think that works for the rest of Michigan in terms of doing that. And in particular, I'm not sure that solves the long-term problem. Because the real issue here is let's solve the long-term issue and the short-term issue. So that's where it is going to be a very difficult period with a lot of tough decisions that need to be made, but let's make those decisions and let's get Detroit growing again, because I think that's something we all agree on. Well, I wouldn't necessarily jump to legislative solutions. I think there are a lot of things that if it comes to legislative solutions, I think I would be open to saying how can we work with the legislature to do those kind of activities. But one of the questions is the whole question of tax collections. And I think it applies to both income tax, property tax, other things, that there's fairly significant improvements possible in the system in Detroit. What I would say is there may be cases where it's not being fully collected. There could be other cases where it may not be collected the best way. So let's just look at improving the entire system to see if there's something we can do to make sure we're doing it the right way for all citizens. The first thing I would say is it's important to maintain our strong sense of fiscal responsibility, to make sure we're paying our debts, our liabilities. And that's something we've done well over the last couple of years. And so I always look for opportunities to make sure, are we making the right payments on our debts? Beyond that, though, I think that's a healthy discussion we'll have with the legislators, because it should be a discussion and a thoughtful one. One area I would put out on the table potentially is to say if we don't come up with a transportation package in terms of a funding package as part of this entire process, one of the things we should look at with some of these resources are our roads. I could ask this group, does anyone like the roads in Michigan? And we need to make sure we get at least the federal matching dollars and hopefully invest more than that in our roads. Yeah, what we'll find, and the conference is actually tomorrow, so the numbers should come out tomorrow. So we're working off estimates that each one of the different groups have. What I would say is there's a combination of both one-time funds and recurring dollars. And so you ask a very relevant question that it makes it complicated for people, but that's part of the part to make sure we have a thoughtful discussion to say, these uses are appropriate for one-time funds. These uses are more appropriate for recurring dollars, ongoing dollars. And I'll give you an easy illustration is when we've looked at the rainy day fund in the past in particular, it's well suited for one-time funds because you have a particular amount, you make a deposit, and you don't know if you're going to have that again. So you want to be careful about relying on one-time funds for recurring programs. So that will be part of the discussion. And that would be a question I would ask when the estimates come out, is to make sure you report that appropriately. Well, yeah, again, part of it will most likely be in the school aid fund, which is for K-12 universities and colleges. Well, the first thing I would say is I look to Superintendent Flanagan as being much more of an education expert than I am in making that assessment of what's right for the kids. So I really look to him and the expertise of the education people in that community and the state board to say what they think is best. And if he's comfortable with that solution, I would be supportive of that, because the goal here is to make sure those kids do as well as possible in a very difficult situation.